Black Ops 6 Zombies has captivated me since launch for a number of reasons. The gameplay feels so smooth and fun, the mode has difficulty and personality that was missing in Cold War, the maps have become far less grounded and more diverse, the camo grind has been enjoyable, and for completionists like myself, there is an insane amount of challenges. I doubt most players will really want to sink time into completing these, given that they probably just want to play the game casually and maybe complete some Easter eggs. But I have been invested into these challenges since launch. It took me a long time to complete many of them, but as of recording this, I've finished all the zombie challenges. However, these challenges aren't all the game has to offer. Because if you played some of the more recent titles, you'd know that there are Dark Ops challenges. These challenges aren't simple things like kill enemies with a specific ammo mod or use a gobblegum to kill zombies. These are challenges that require the player to overcome difficult challenges without knowing what those challenges are, unless you just Google them. But even knowing how to unlock every one, these challenges were by far some of the more difficult challenges I've completed in this game. I even had to learn how to speedrun the Liberty Falls Easter egg for one, which was honestly really fun to do and felt incredibly satisfying to complete. But as I chipped away at Black Ops 6's most difficult challenges, I was left with one that had still eluded me after all of this time: social distancing. This is what I'd consider to be the most difficult Dark Ops challenge, and it's not because I'm American. Modern zombies games have basically become balanced around the player taking lots of hits, so managing to not get hit for the first 19 rounds of the game is something that the game wasn't really designed for. However, this challenge honestly isn't that bad once you have a strategy in mind, or if you just cheesed it with invincibility glitches or save quitting. And I've seen some strategies that make it a lot less daunting of a task, but I had a different idea in mind. When Citadel des Morts first released, I found myself drawn to the map. But if I had to choose the main thing that keeps me coming back, it would be a little perk called Vulture Aid. I never got to use Vulture Aid, given I still haven't played Black Ops 2, so when Vulture Aid was revealed to be the new perk coming with the map, I was incredibly excited. And that excitement ended up being justified, given that this perk is easily one of the best in Black Ops 6. The augments are some of the coolest in the game, and I especially love the Picky Eater augment. This just lets you spam decoys or molotovs without worrying about crafting more, and the synergy this augment has with the map's unique incantations makes the perk feel even more fitting on this map. But this also gave me an idea that could potentially help me complete social distancing. Decoys will distract zombies for a period of time, and if you can just keep spamming decoys while distracting zombies, then this Dark Ops challenge should be easy. Sure, I could take the safe and easy way to complete this challenge, but that's not any fun. I wanted to complete the hardest Dark Ops challenge on my favorite map with no gobblegums, and I was going to try my best to do just that. When I first started attempting to complete this challenge, I wasn't taking it super seriously. I was using guns that I wanted to level up or unlock camos for, and this would usually result in me getting hit within the first few rounds. The spawn area might be spacious enough, but there are a lot of spawn points for zombies to spawn, and it's incredibly easy for them to sneak up on you. The decoy spam was an alluring idea, but I couldn't even get to Vulture Aid without getting hit. And a large part of that was not just due to getting hit by zombies in stupid ways, but also because of this map's bug rounds. On Liberty Falls, these rounds will only spawn vermin, which can be annoying, but there are ways to deal with these rounds without getting hit. On Terminus, these rounds will only spawn parasites, and while these things are incredibly annoying for a challenge like this, you can at least be prepared to deal with them and continuously move around to avoid their attacks. Even on the Tomb, they stuck with the same vermin-only rounds that Liberty Falls has. But for Citadel, they made these rounds spawn both vermin and parasites. And this was a major problem. Parasites can easily hit you, even if you do your best to dodge, since they sometimes can aim further than you anticipate, and they're annoying to kill because they fly around all over the place. This wouldn't be so bad if you were able to solely focus on killing the parasites in the air around you, but the vermin require you to constantly be looking at the ground to make sure they're not sneaking up on you either. When I got hit during my early attempts, these rounds were the primary reason why I got hit, and the more I kept trying, the more infuriated I got with them. I cannot explain the amount of tilt that I felt when I spent the first few rounds carefully avoiding every zombie and opening up the castle, only to get hit by one of these fuckers that still managed to hit me even though I tried to dodge. But the worst part is that even if I managed to make it past the bug round, it wasn't going to get any easier. Getting Vulturade is a pretty big deal given that I can get tons of decoys. But in order to get those decoys, we have to actually kill zombies, and that becomes more difficult as the rounds progress. If I wanted to kill zombies quickly, then I needed to unlock Pack-a-Punch. This requires delving deeper into the castle, breaking the locks off of this crate, and killing the Doppelgast inside. Getting down there isn't much of an issue, but killing this Doppelgast is incredibly tough. When it exits the crate, it will always do its projectile attack, which would instantly fail the challenge if I got hit by it. But this is why I used the Aether Shroud Void Dash Augment to dash out of its way quickly and shoot while it or the parasites it spawns were unable to attack me. However, this is a pretty difficult feat to achieve, given that Aether Shroud just makes it run away. I usually had to play incredibly well, and even when I did that, sometimes the parasites just screwed me over anyways. The first time I finally got the Pack-a-Punch during this challenge, it felt so incredibly rewarding, but unfortunately, I had to screw it up immediately after. While trying to do a side Easter egg for more loot, I ended up getting hit by a zombie, and I went from feeling on top of the world to feeling the greatest despair of knowing that I had killed what was an incredible run. But of course, I wasn't going to let that stop me, so I kept trying to get back there, and my patience started running thin. Eventually, I wrote off this challenge as impossible, and I was going to have to take the Walk of Shame back to Liberty Falls. I moved on to the other remaining Dark Ops challenges I had left, but once all of those were done, it was time to go back to social distancing once again. Part of me knew that if I just went to Liberty Falls, I could probably knock out this challenge with a few attempts. But part of me also really wanted to do it on Citadel. I mean, I had already made it to Pack-a-Punch before, so why couldn't I just do it again? But if I was going to give this a shot, I was going to need to refine my strategy. Training around the spawn was risky and difficult, but this map doesn't really have good spots to camp, is what I thought until I realized the one spot that might just work. Right next to the spawn area is a tavern with an upstairs section that features no spawn points for zombies, so I can safely camp out without worrying about zombies showing up behind me. However, what I didn't know is that this spot would end up being even better than I thought, since it causes all the zombies to spawn in areas that force them to path up this singular staircase. So once I was in here, I could focus primarily on the staircase while checking over my shoulder every once in a while. But as good as this spot was, it wouldn't matter without a gun that could keep the zombies away. I had been using random guns while camo grinding when I first started the challenge, but now, I knew it was really important to pick the right gun. so I went with the ASG shotgun. This gun is recommended for the Liberty Falls strategy too, and it's easy to see why once you've used the thing. It evaporates pretty much anything, even if it's far away, and it does so quickly once it's pack-a-punched. And since it's a shotgun, accuracy isn't that big of an issue, which makes it far easier to use than almost any other gun for a challenge like this. My first attempt with this strategy already showed me just how important it was, as I managed to make it past the bug round without too much issue. There were a few close moments, but I was feeling pretty good about my chances already. However, I soon learned an important lesson that cost me this attempt. On the next round, I killed a zombie, and a vermin popped out from it, leaving me little room to do anything but get hit. After the first bug round, all zombies have a chance to do this, so making sure they don't get too close is important. This attempt made me a lot more optimistic about this challenge, so I gave it another shot, and I would not be disappointed. Unlike last time, I immediately focused on heading to the tavern, checking behind the counter for this crawler, and heading up to the camping spot. I stayed there until round 3, which is when I opened the first door, killed the zombie that sometimes spawns here, and purchased Speed Cola. Speed Cola has always been a solid perk to buy, but in this challenge, it is essential. Spending less time reloading basically means that there's less of a window where I'm vulnerable. And on top of that, the augments I used made my field upgrade charge faster, which is incredibly useful, and also allowed me to use equipment faster. While it might seem like Speed Cola isn't flashy or interesting, it is probably the most important perk for this challenge, and it's also the one we could purchase the earliest, so buying it as early as possible is a no-brainer. On round 4, I got a well-timed double points that I was able to take full advantage of. I had pretty much been exclusively sitting in the corner up to this point, but I started to realize that as long as I stayed near the stairs, the spawns wouldn't change. This allowed me to have more time to kill the zombies before needing to retreat to the corner, and it allowed for me to have time to dodge to the side when reloading if necessary. At the end of the round, I purchased more ammo while I had time, and also purchased a rarity upgrade for my ASG. But this turned out to not really be that big of an upgrade, whereas Deadwire could stun tons of zombies and one-shot annoying bugs. So for future runs, I focused on Deadwire first instead. Once I got to the end of round 5, I saved a zombie and led it all the way up to the courtyard so that I could open the door to the castle. This can be pretty scary since the zombie can just hit you while you're turning the cannon, but as long as you pay close enough attention to the minimap, you can roughly estimate if you'll have time or if you should loop around to try again. You can also enable third-person mode, which is far better than the minimap as long as you approach from the right side instead of the left. Once inside, I deal with the extra zombies inside the dining hall and finally reach Vulturade. Vulturade marks a turning point in the challenge, since it provides a number of important benefits. The ammo drops from the base perk are always welcome, since I can't really just go run to buy ammo easily like I could in a normal game, but the augments help to provide a lot of protection. While the gas cloud isn't the easiest thing to make use of, being able to charge your field upgrade when things are less hectic is a big deal. However, the reason why I even started trying this challenge on this map in the first place was because of Picky Eater. This augment makes enemies drop your equipment more frequently, so enemies should drop decoys often enough to help me get out of bad situations when they come up. And they can also drop more combat axes. I originally felt that lethal equipment didn't really matter in this challenge, but combat axes are actually pretty useful. They're a great way to deal with zombies when low on ammo and help to conserve ammo too, all while not damaging the player. It's possible that self-damage doesn't matter in this challenge, but I wasn't taking any chances, and we'll talk about the other lethal equipment later. As I progressed through the rounds, I was doing pretty well. I had to finally use my field upgrade at one point, as I had 2 vermin spawn from zombies that were close to me, but thanks to my perks and augments, I had 2 charges of Ether Shroud ready. I haven't really talked much about Ether Shroud yet, but it's the obvious choice for this challenge, since it prevents all enemies from being able to see you for a short time, and with the Burst Dash augment, it can kill a few zombies too. After replenishing my ammo and keeping 1 zombie alive, I decided that round 8 was the time to finally descend into the castle. Through the dining hall and the dungeon lies the doublet room, where we have to break 3 locks to reveal a Doppelgast. Once it's free, I use my Ether Shroud to dodge the projectile attack, and thanks to a lucky Deadwire proc after, I was able to just wail on this thing while it couldn't do anything. I still had to avoid it afterwards and threw a decoy to delay dealing with the parasites, but once I avoided the Doppelgast explosion and killed the parasite, I was able to pack a punch on only my 2nd attempt with this strategy. However, despite what you might think, I was in a really bad position. That Deadwire proc did help a lot with killing the Doppelgast, but it also killed the last zombie, so the round progressed. And after pack-a-punching, I didn't have enough to use the sewer tunnel to escape. I was stuck in the small corner of the room and needed 500 points to get out. I quickly dealt with the parasite, had some incredibly close calls with zombies, and threw a few decoys to kill as much as I could before grabbing the nuke and exiting without getting hit. This was incredibly stressful, but I felt on top of the world as I re-entered the tavern with a pack-a-punched gun. At the end of round 10, I saved a zombie and ventured back into the castle. There were a couple reasons for this, and the most important one was to buy my next perk, Elemental Pop. I'm an Elemental Pop hater, given that it tends to ruin my camo grind or kill the last zombie sometimes, and that's when it uses the ammo mod I wanted to. I thought Electric Cherry might be a good fit for this challenge though, since it could technically save me at some point when I'm vulnerable. But if a zombie is that close to you when you're attempting this challenge, then you probably did something wrong. Citrus Focus is a great augment though, since it'll make Deadwire procs a lot more frequent. With my new perk acquired, I wanted to start working on the Rat King side Easter egg, which requires you to scare away 10 rats and feed them to obtain a few rewards. You get a cool crown and a decent variety of rewards, such as points, weapons, and perks. But while going through the castle, I ended up in a pretty terrible spot when I hit a crate and a parasite popped out. These can sometimes give you salvage, so they can be worth hitting, but I had to kill the parasite before it hit me. And this happened to proc Deadwire, killing the zombie and ending the round. I originally thought that the zombie despawned, given this tends to happen a lot in BO6, but either way, I was now stuck in this room as a new round was starting, and I thought this might be the end. I put my back against the wall and started blasting every zombie coming my way while using decoys to distract them. Eventually, I bought the door when I had my chance and exited through the sewer again. I carefully made my way back to the tavern and even managed to activate the Easter egg song on my way back, which is honestly pretty fitting because this challenge had me feeling like a slave at times. I had just enough ammo to finish the round and bought ammo and a rarity upgrade during the round change. The next round ended up being a bug round, which was incredibly scary to see, given I had just used my decoys earlier, but I got somewhat lucky that the parasites didn't end my run immediately, and Ether Shrouded before things could have gotten bad. I made it through the round by some miracle, and I was starting to feel like this could be it, but I had a few other things to worry about. Starting from round 10, helmet zombies will spawn to give the player a stamp, which they can use to unlock one of the 4 swords, and they keep spawning until you have the final stamp to unlock the final sword. While they do sometimes spawn during the round, I nearly lost my run when this guy showed up during the round change. Had I not reacted quickly enough, this probably would have killed the run. And it's moments like these that really show how impactful the ASG is to this run. Round 13 is also when the first Doppelgas spawns, which pretty much requires an Ether Shroud to not get hit by. But now that I had gotten past all these obstacles, I was feeling pretty good. I had survived so much insane shit by this point that I was pretty sure I could handle anything. Until... yeah, this was what killed the run. A rogue zombie coming from the other direction as I was reloading. This reload wasn't even something I really needed to do, given I had a ton of ammo in the magazine still. But I have this pretty stupid habit of reloading insanely often. And while it is important to reload during this challenge, this was just a bad time to do so. Losing this run to that of all things felt pretty bad, but on the other hand, the fact that I managed to make it this far really showed me that this strategy was how I was going to do this. When I started grinding attempts later, I began to get more comfortable with the challenge, and was even starting to make use of things like equipment drops on the ground, since they could save on ammo. I managed to get a solid attempt going with both Speed Cola and Elemental Pop purchased by round 7, and even survived some rogue parasites, but it came at the cost of needing to use my precious Ether Shrouds. This meant I had none for the Doppelgast, and I couldn't really afford to wait much longer, so I risked it all. This is incredibly hard, as not only do you have to avoid the Doppelgast sprinting at you, but you also have to hope the parasites don't manage to snipe you, and you have to avoid the last zombie while trying to not kill it. Since if you try to kill the Doppelgast mid-round, then the run is probably good as dead. But somehow, I made it through with a lucky Deadwire proc and was back at the tavern. I had made it through the hard part by some miracle, but this also caused me to get a little overconfident, teaching me another important lesson. Round 12 was a bug round, and while I was able to kill a few parasites, I got randomly sniped by one that I could barely see. Bug rounds at this point become incredibly difficult, since unlike the first bug round, there will be a decent amount of parasites that spawn. You can kill a few, but there's a good chance you'll just get sniped by one of them eventually, which is why saving a decoy for this round is really important. Sure, it's nice to have extra decoys, but it's better to use them while you have them than lose the run because you wanted to save them for later. With this, I continued my grind, but struggled to get back to Pack-a-Punch. I'd get swiped by a random zombie or have to reload at the worst time, and I was starting to get a little tired of this challenge. I can't tell you how many times I've had to hear Carver say, "Does a one-legged duck swim in circles? Do you miss being on the right side?" And now it's been pretty much ingrained into my brain. I eventually was able to get a run to Pack-a-Punch, but before I could actually get there, I greeted by destroying a crate and killing the parasite inside of it, which activated Deadwire and killed my zombie before I even entered the Pack-a-Punch room. When I did finally try to fight the Doppelgast, I couldn't outrun it, and was ultimately left with another dead run. As I was grinding out more attempts, I started to experiment with some ideas that could potentially be useful, such as buying Vulturade as my first perk rather than Speed Cola. But more importantly, I finally decided to hit the box. The mystery box in this game is not really that useful, honestly. I'd rather just use the ASG than chance it with a gun that could potentially ruin the whole run. And I was hoping to minimize as much RNG as possible when doing these attempts. But I began to realize that RNG is incredibly prevalent in the run already, so why not add just a bit more randomness into the mix? While a second gun isn't great and can vary depending on what comes out of the box, it does help with two important issues. It gives us a second weapon to use when the first is out of ammo, and it can also be used in a pinch when reloading might be too slow. However, I pulled the AS Val from the box, which is generally a decent weapon, but isn't quick to use like the ASG, so it ultimately ended up being pretty useless, and I lost the run while reloading my ASG. Before my next day of attempts, I decided to continue with my experimentation by taking a look through some augments, and Deadshot Daiquiri caught my eye. I honestly don't even bother buying this perk most of the time by this point, and I also haven't changed these augments since I unlocked them months ago. It still isn't an amazing perk for this challenge, since it relies on getting critical hits, which is hard to do with a hipfire shotgun when not in close range, but having a chance to get ammo back is great. And most surprisingly, it has an augment that reduces hipfire spread. I had no idea this even existed, but it does make sense for Deadshot, since that will probably increase the amount of critical hits you can get. As I started actually playing, I also continued making the most of the drops I get during a run by using the lethal equipment dropped by zombies, but this ended up being a mistake that I did not make again. Even though lethal equipment may be lethal enough to kill zombies, it will sometimes just leave them as crawlers. This isn't that big of a deal usually, but when there's a ton of ragdolled bodies in an area where you're camping, then it becomes incredibly easy for a crawler to sneak up on you without noticing. And that's exactly what happened here. This was the moment where I realized that it was just not worth using lethals aside from the combat axe, even if they might seem useful. I was getting better at the challenge, but there were still a few issues I was facing. The variants you can get during the run can either make or break the run, and that doesn't just apply to box luck or a great double points. Unlike speedruns, you actually want a bug round on round 5, since that means there will be less bugs and more zombies to kill on round 6 instead of the other way around. But even if you do get a bug round on round 5, you're not safe from getting unlucky with parasite spawns. You can sometimes get up to 4 or 5 parasites during these rounds. And given that I wasn't nearly equipped enough to deal with that, this would usually end my attempt on the spot. It's simply not feasible to dodge and kill 4 or 5 parasites at once consistently, while also making sure a vermin doesn't catch you by surprise. But there was still one other issue I was facing, which was the Doppelgast encounter. While I had been able to successfully kill it without getting hit a few times, this was a lot easier said than done, and I felt like there had to be something I could do to make it easier. While the Deadwire procs usually meant I would be able to kill it before anything else could hit me, they were also a double-edged sword, since they almost always killed the zombie and ended the round. I wanted a way to keep the Doppelgast in place while not killing the zombie, and I wasn't really sure if there was a way to do that. After losing another run to a close but unsuccessful Doppelgast encounter, I went through the augments again and found an augment that I bet most people don't even know about. Frozen Stiff is an augment for Cryo Freeze that I had no clue existed, and that's because it's pretty useless for most gameplay in this game. The zombies are already slowed by an insane amount, so why bother taking this when you could have a chance of creating an ice cloud that will freeze the whole horde? But this augment was perfect for the Doppelgast issue, as I wasn't really using Cryo Freeze or the ice cloud anyway, and this would keep the Doppelgast still as I fired repeatedly into its head. When I came back for attempts later, my first few runs didn't go so well. Even when I'd get an early bug round, I'd have multiple parasites shooting at me, but I had become a lot more comfortable with the challenge, and I think that's pretty visible with my movement and aiming. I was even getting pretty good at getting hipfire critical kills, which is nice for the extra points they provide over regular kills. I continued with my attempts, but they just couldn't find their footing. Until this one. It started off with a mediocre double points, but made up for it with decent salvage drops and even a nuke from a random zombie. I didn't even know that these zombies could drop power-ups, but I was definitely taking that, and still had enough time to grab Speed Cola too. On round 5, I made a bit of a risky play by hitting the box during the round change, since I was low on ammo, and I hit the KSV. The KSV is an alright SMG, but it's definitely not my favorite, and I also happen to have a pretty bad sight on it, which could cause issues if I needed to use it extensively. As I walked back to the camping spot, a bug round started on round 5, but I still ended up with horrible luck, as I got a total of 5 parasite spawns. It seemed pretty doomed, but somehow I evaded every single one, and since they didn't come after me at the same time, I was able to get a great Deadwire proc to instantly kill 2 of them, and pick off the remaining 3 as they came after me. I still nearly lost the run here, but somehow I didn't get hit here, and that was enough to put me in the clear for now. In the next few rounds, I was able to make decent use of the KSV with Cryo Freeze to pick up critical kills when needed, and it was surprisingly doing a solid job for the challenge. However, the big game changer was the insane amount of decoys I was getting from zombies, which was big for farming points and making use of the KSV. When I got a godlike double points on round 10, I was able to use a decoy to take out the horde easily, and this really ballooned my point lead. It was at this point that I started to realize this might be the run. With a single zombie left, I headed into the castle and freed the Doppelgast. I used my Ether Shroud at the doorway to prevent it from running out of the room this time, and used my KSV to freeze it in place. With that, I was able to easily crit it until it was dead, and thanks to Ether Shroud, the zombie didn't even get hit by the Deadwire. With my Pack-a-Punch gun, I decided to make use of the free double points and bonus points power-ups, and began heading back when I nearly made a mistake that costed me everything. When I kept the zombie alive, I would try to keep it in my sight, since if it got too far away, it could respawn in front of me and catch me off guard. But for some reason, this zombie decided to path out of my sight, and it nearly swiped me when I went looking for it. I was probably pixels away from getting hit and having to start all over again, but somehow I had yet to be hit. With that close call over with, I headed back to the tavern and was finally able to play the Easter egg song for the second time. A bug round immediately followed, and I nearly lost the run again when my decoy ended earlier than I anticipated. I'm not sure if this was because I threw it too early or if Deadwire somehow killed it. But fortunately for me, I was far enough away from the vermin to not get hit, and I had extra decoys to use to get to the next round. This was the round when the Doppelgast spawns, and I somehow was lucky enough to stun and kill it before it even got to the stairs. Things were looking up, and they were about to get even better when the perfect double points spawned, and I was about to take full advantage of it. With that, I had made it through the entire Easter egg song, and I could feel that this was the run. Thanks to that incredibly timed double points, I had enough to double pack my gun, so I could delete pretty much anything in front of me, and I was ready to prove that on round 16. This is when the amalgam spawns, and they are notorious for being bullet sponges. But as it started charging towards me, I Ether Shrouded and just sprayed every bullet I had into it until it was down. As a bonus, I even got a mutant injection, which is a godsend for this challenge, since getting hit while in the mutant injection doesn't actually count as being hit. With the amalgam down, there was really nothing left that could phase me. I just killed everything in sight, used decoys during the bug rounds, Ether Shrouded during the last Doppelgast spawn, and at the start of round 20, I finally popped the calling card. It felt so good to finally complete this after so long, and on top of that, I did it in my own way. I didn't use a guide or take the easy way out by doing it on Liberty Falls. I used my own strategies on my favorite map, and I learned a ton along the way. But now that I had completed the challenge, what should I do for the rest of the match? After mowing down more zombies, I decided that I'd try to take it a step further, and see if I could exfil on round 21 without taking damage. While this might sound really hard, it really wasn't, since I had just the perfect thing to do so. Once I hit round 21, I started the exfil, ran to the castle, and ether shrouded once it actually started. After getting to the exfil point, I used my mutant injection and spammed melee until I was finally able to exfil without taking any damage. And with that, the challenge was finally over, and I even went above and beyond with it. But while it did feel really good to finish the challenge once and for all, there was one small problem. I thought I had been saving the best for last, but I had somehow glanced over what might actually be the hardest Dark Ops challenge, Reaper of the Undead. This challenge requires you to kill a total of 1 million zombies, which means I'm not actually done with the Dark Ops challenges. And to make things even more depressing, while editing this video, I realized I missed another Dark Ops challenge, which requires you to unlock 33 Nebula camos on weapons. I thought that Dark Ops Mastery counted as one of the 2 challenges left, but I somehow completely missed this challenge. I've been grinding camos since the game released, so I think I can finish this soon. But as for Reaper of the Undead, I don't see myself completing it for some time. I've been doing some high rounding to try and complete it faster, but honestly, I'm just not really much of a high round guy. I never really found them interesting in the older games, and I don't really think they're that interesting in Black Ops 6 either. I much prefer the progression of a normal match and attempting challenges to satisfy my more hardcore cravings, so I don't see myself doing this super often. But while this may not have been as satisfying as it could have been, I still had a lot of fun completing this challenge, despite the heartbreak, frustration, and tilt that this challenge put me through. And another thing I really love about this challenge is that it shows how well the augment system as a whole is designed. It feels like there's so many ways to play the game and so many things to learn about. And even after 300 hours, I'm still trying different augment combinations and still learning new things about the game. So I really hope they continue with this philosophy instead of Cold War's upgrade everything once and forget about it system. If you're looking to complete this Dark Ops challenge, or really any Dark Ops challenge for that matter, I don't know if I'd recommend doing it like how I did. It took me a lot of time, strategizing, practice, and stressful execution to pull this off. And while copying my strategy will save some time, Liberty Falls is by far the easier option, and there's plenty of guides that do a great job at showcasing how to beat this challenge easily. But if you're more of the adventurous, curious type, finding out how to do the challenge on your own is a lot more interesting and rewarding. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had spent time just attempting challenges on my own without looking up strategies, but it's a little too late for that now. So all I can do is tell you about the experience and convince you to try things yourself. With all that said, I can finally play this game again without worrying about getting hit anymore, so I guess it's back to the camo grind for me. Wait, get 20 or more consecutive kills without taking damage. Maybe I'll just go back to DS games instead. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.